today we are jumping back into Car Mechanic Simulator. This was originally a PS4 game. It's been out for a number of years, but I do like to go back through the PS catalogue and have a look if there's anything that might take my fancy. And after games have been out for a while, they tend to drop in price as well. And you've also got, if you've got the PlayStation subscription, then there's a whole wealth of games to check out. And the reason that I've been spending a little bit more time in this is because it's kind of sits a little bit outside of the generic simulator series. So there seems to be a huge increase in terms of the different simulators and the level of complexity. And this one would be quite easy to skip over, only because really the tutorial is just doesn't really take you through any of the gameplay mechanics. So it could seem a little bit misleading in that the opening scene makes it look that the core mechanic is that you're going to go to barns and find and restore cars. That's not to say that doesn't happen, but it is different from what you might expect straight out the gate. And hopefully that's where this video is helpful. So I will go through what I have picked up over a couple of hours of gameplay, and you can probably see up there in the top of the screen that I'm got a little bit of cash, a little bit of experience, and that's going to help us work towards what we just mentioned in those barn finds. So we'll start from scratch. We would be dropped into our garage, and a lot, or if not everything, is done via radial menus. And I do apologise if you watched other videos in this channel, because there'll be some repetition. If you want more of a beginner's guide, then that sits there as well. So this is intended to just layer over the top of that, be just a little bit of a deeper dive. So radial menu, this is where we take our jobs, the phone icon there, and we got various jobs which will increase in complexity as we progress through the game. So we will, in terms of the time left, you can see here there's different amounts of time before those jobs expire. What I haven't done at the moment is seen whether we can accept all of them and put some vehicles into our garage, and I will show you that now. So let's go ahead and accept this one. So in terms of the main interaction menu, we talked about the radial menu there, which we access through the triangle button, and then we've got various things around our garage. Over here we have a world map, and there's a couple of things that are open from the get-go, not much of which will be useful, I would say, from the get-go. So you can go to a car salon where there's two vehicles that are very expensive and you can't afford. You can go to test tracks. I'm not really sure at this stage what that adds to the game. I presume that then comes later on, where you go and drive the vehicles to kind of test out what may or may not be wrong with them. So as you progress through the game and complete jobs, you will be rewarded with chests that have different car parts in that you can either keep or sell. And if you're very lucky, then you will get a barn location, which you can see has been added to the world map there. Now, when you travel to those locations, there are a number of vehicles, but you do have to pay for them, and they are quite expensive. So you can go there, have a look at what the vehicles are, what might need repairing. So that's a nice gameplay loop that comes a little bit later on. I also, just to give a heads up, there were lots of parts around the garage which I thought I could scavenge and then sell on, but you do also need to purchase those. So when you come to leave the site, it will ask you if you want to pay for those parts. So it does cost you $100 to go to these barn locations and see what's there. I can see that that's remained on the world map. Let's just... Yes, so it does cost you $100 every time you go back to that location. So I'm not going to spend that on there. Back to our garage. Main things that we're going to be working with, of course, the vehicles and the ramp. The leveling system is accessed through the toolbox here, and as you can see, I've used my skill points for various different things there to kind of either increase the efficiency of the mechanic or knock some prices off. Now, I did, when I got to enough skill points, think, I would actually quite like the tablet to be able to order parts and not keep going back to the machine. And as you can see, if you go to reset your skill points, it's going to cost $4,000, and that is pricey because typically early game, the profit that you get for each of the jobs is probably somewhere between $300 and $500. So the progression system, you're not going to be motoring through this really very quickly, and typically a job, once you're familiar with the mechanics on a particular vehicle, you're probably looking at about 20 to 30 minutes per job. Just to give you an idea of the pacing. So we've had a vehicle dropped off into our garage that needs repairing. The original tutorial had you doing a minimal repair and going to a test track, which involved driving the vehicle. Oddly, you can get into, I say oddly, that's only because there's not really any point to this, actually, for want of a better phrase. So we can get into the driver's seat, but that's it. There's literally nothing else that we can do. We can open the radial menu and actually start the car, but we can't drive it to the ramp. We can't drive the car either, other than taking it to one of those test tracks. So how do we get this onto the ramp? Well, it is back to the radial menu. So there's two different pop-up menus. If you're not highlighting a vehicle, then you'll get those options. And once you highlight any part of the vehicle, then you will get a number of different options. So early game, when you have a repair to do, you'll get a nice job list. So the car status here is going to be your main go-to area. And that is going to tell you what you need to repair on the car to finish those jobs. I'll come back to that in just a second, because as the game progresses, there's actually some diagnostic needed. And so rather than being told what you need to do, you need to work that out. So there's two different ways you can do that. You can either go around the vehicle and look for the parts which are very clearly rusty, or you can do this overview mode. And what that will do, very helpfully, is you can see there that there are two parts that are highlighted in red. So they're the parts that are going to need replacing. So that's option one. If we go back, to our radial menu, then the other option, which is the, in my opinion, better approach early game, is because it's already guiding you on what you need to do, is to click the square button to track each of the parts that you need to replace. And what that does is when you go back to the vehicle and you start to work on a part, then the parts that you need to replace will be flagged in blue, just like this. So you can see both there that this is flagged in blue. It's also very clearly rusty and needs replacing. So what we can do at this part to make life easier is to actually track this part. So to do that, back to the radial menu, and we've got a parts notes option here. And we can add it to our list. And that will mean that we know what we need to purchase from the computer later on. And then we hold X down, remove that part. And then the other gameplay mechanic here, as you can probably expect, is that in order to get to some parts, you need to remove others on the vehicle. So if I here hover over different areas, just to show this, and anything that we can take apart, we can immediately access, will be highlighted in green. So we need to be able to get to the air filter here. But you can see that's not green at the moment, so we need to remove the clips. So in order to move around the vehicle, the left thumbstick takes you around the environment and your right thumbstick moves your cursor. As you can see there, we've taken the clips off. That means that now when we come to click the cover, we can hold that, and you can see there that the air filter itself is probably going to need replacing. If you lose track of what it is you are doing, then you can always use the menu to go back to the car status and it will prompt it. Another thing that you can do now that we removed the oil filter is we can untrack it, and you can probably see now that that is no longer highlighted in blue, so we can keep a track of the items that we need to replace much easier. Again, because we know we need to replace the oil filter, we can add that to our parts notes, ready for when we want to go and purchase one. We'll remove that, and then last but by no means least, we've got a fuel filter here, which again is very visually rusty. So we'll add that to our parts list. And we'll remove it. So if for whatever reason you forget to add those parts to the list of things that you want to purchase, don't panic too much. You can go to your inventory menu. So again, I've come away from the vehicle here. I'm pressing the radial menu button, which is triangle, and we could go to our inventory, and in there are going to be any parts that we have removed. So the mechanic of the game is that essentially anything below an acceptable standard will be highlighted in red and needs replacing. So you can, if you haven't put these on your parts list, the inventory is a good place to go to see what it is you need to buy. And very helpfully, that leads us on to the next part, is that we know what we need to purchase there. We need an oil filter, we need an air filter, and we need a fuel filter. And if we press the big pad button in the middle of our joypad, I'm not sure joypad is the right, or controller perhaps, whatever you want to call it. If you press on that, then that will add it to a shopping list. So we'll do that with each of these items, because now what we need to do is go and purchase them. So at the moment, that's via this state-of-the-art computer over here. And when we first go in, we're going to be met with this screen. So it's broken down into different categories of what we might need to buy. And early game, almost everything is parts. So it does look like there's a lot of scope for progression in the game. And there's a couple of things that we can do here. So if we have added them to the shopping list and we press the options button, then quite helpfully that is going to show up in the top right there. That looks like it's duplicated. That might be that I have added those earlier. But as you can see on the computer itself, you've got different sections of types of things that you might want to purchase, and you can either go to each of those areas and narrow it down, as we'll do here. And the reason that the shopping list is useful is that we know we need an air filter, but there are different types of them. So the shopping list shows us that we need air filter ROTB, which is this fella here. So pressing X gives us a price, and we can choose the quantity that we need. Let's go ahead and buy that. We also needed an oil filter and an air filter base. If I just ordered the wrong part. No, that didn't need the base. So you can see it's quite easy to lose track. What I will do though is just to show you that actually, if you don't want to, if it's a very expansive area. So the engine's going to include lots of components, so will the others. If you want to narrow that down really quickly, then you can press the square button, and if I start typing in oil for oil filter, then it will narrow it down even further. And as you can see, again, there are different types of oil filters, and we want oil filter ROT, which is this one, $28. And I think we also needed a fuel filter, so let's go back to our search. Fuel, okay, fuel filter, and there's just one type of fuel filter there. So a couple of other things to mention. If you accidentally buy the wrong part, yes, you can sell it back, but I don't think you get full price for it. So again, when we're not on the vehicle itself, we can go to our inventory, and this is a good means to keep track of, again, what you need to replace. So we can see we've got the original oil filter, we've got the replacement, we have the air filter, we have the replacement, and we have the fuel filter, and we have the replacement. So what we'll do, I would recommend leaving the old ones in there until you've completed the job, because you can sell these, you can sell them on. You won't get very much money, but it just keeps your inventory nice and tidy. So it's just a helpful thing to leave it in there, so that if for whatever reason you've not tracked an item, then it's in there for reference. Now for this particular job, we could access everything from the HUD of the vehicle. So I could go in and just replace those now, but what I will do is, we've not actually covered how to get the vehicle onto the ramp, so we'll do that right now. If we go back to our menu, then we have the option here to move the car, and we can move it over to the car lifter. So if we need to access the vehicle from underneath for anything, which we quite often do, then you can raise it on the lifter here. So that nicely covers how we take faulty parts off. Now we need to know how to replace them. So when we go back onto our menu to work on a particular part, you can see there that the items that we need to replace are still tracked, so they're still visible in blue. And that it can, when you dropped into the game, it can seem quite overawing if you don't use these tools to be able to track the job. So it's always going to default to taking things apart. So in order to replace things, we need to go back to that radial menu and go to part mount. And same principle as we saw before, anything that we can access to replace it will highlight in green. We can hold our X button, and you can see there that we've got the damaged one and the new one. It will default to the new one. We can now put the air filter cover back on. And finally the clips. And so it does run nicely in sequence, because again, it could seem there are some more complicated repairs where it feels like you need to take a lot of things off to be able to get where you need to be, and that worrying about, sorry, didn't quite hover on that properly, worrying about the order that those need to be replaced in, thankfully, isn't too much of a concern, because they will generally be in the same area. Okay, so our fuel filter, again, that's in green. That means that we can access it to replace, put the new one on, job's good. And because we untracked the second part, I just wanted to show you that. So if for whatever reason you don't track it, then when you come back to put things back on, and sorry, this is on the very left side of the screen, it's not very central, but should you forget to track the item that you want to replace, it will have a silhouette like you can see here, and once you hover over it, it will still show you that you can replace that. So let's put that new one on, and circle button to come away from the repair menu, and now we can see where we're up to with our car repair via the car status. So there we were needing to replace all the filters, and the job already gave us a list of what we needed to do in order to do that. We tracked the parts so that when we were working on the vehicle, they highlighted in blue. When we actually hovered over the parts, we again added them to a job list so that we could track where they're up to. But we can also use the inventory system to see what we have taken off and what we need to replace. And then if there's lots of different things that you need to either disassemble or reassemble, then you can use the tracking option on the parts if you'd like to then either track or untrack the part as you do it, so that when you're working on the vehicle, you're only focusing on what you need to complete it. So, all green ticks. As you can see, we're not making masses of money out of this. So, we spent $80 on the parts. We got a task bonus and a job bonus. So, we're making $120 out of this particular job. We can go ahead, finish the order, and the vehicle's gone. So obviously that took a little bit longer than if you were familiar with all the mechanics and just rifled through. This was accompanied by a bit, hopefully, a helpful instructional video. And so we've probably taken somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 minutes to do a job, and that's given us $120. Just to put that into context, when you go to the barns to purchase the vehicles, they are roughly $30,000, and as you can expect, vehicles are certainly not in tip-top condition or immediately saleable, and then that means that you've got to go and then also have the cost of your parts. So there is going to be quite a bit of grinding to this game. What I would say is my initial experience of the game, because of that lack of tutorial, I was kind of put off a bit with it. And so once I kind of had a little bit of patience and worked things out, it's become a much more enjoyable game. And actually a few hints and tips to set you on your way hopefully are very useful. The game has been out for a number of years, so I'm sure there are many other videos out there and on more established channels. But if you found your way to this one, then I would like to thank you very much for watching. If you could hit the thumbs up, then that helps massively. It's a very new channel, and I'm looking to find an audience and get the videos higher up those precious algorithms. I'm also a fan of the simulator series, and I've got a couple of different formats on the channel at the moment. So we have Hypermarket Simulator, where we do a full working day to progress through the levels, and there's also Recycling Center Simulator. So the idea with both of those series originally is to get 10 episodes, so there's a bit of content there so that if people do enjoy it, then they can watch a few in a row. If that's of interest to you, then if you hit that subscribe button, then you'll get prompted as there are videos posted. So that wraps up this video. We've gone through a little bit of a deeper dive of the things that I've found useful to get the most out of the game, and I hope that is useful to you.